I arrived early at my son's house, and what I saw my daughter-in-law do with my jewelry was worth more than the $400,000 I had hidden away. But what I heard afterward was worse than any theft. Today, I'm going to tell you something I never thought I would, and if you, for just a second, feel like this sounds familiar, I only ask that you leave a like and subscribe. It will help me to keep unburdening myself. My name is Dorothy Miller. I'm 72 years old, though some days I feel like I'm 100. I was born in a small town in Texas, in a little clapboard house that smelled of lime and freshly baked cornbread. My hands, now wrinkled and spotted by time, were once soft. Before sewing, needles turned them into what you see now: crooked fingers, swollen knuckles, white scars where I pricked myself 1,000 times working until dawn. I spent my whole life in a tailor shop. It wasn't mine. I was just the one who arrived the earliest and left the latest. The one who took the jobs nobody else wanted: endless hems, wedding dresses with thousands of pearls that had to be sewn on one by one, custom suits for country singers with embroidery so fine it left my eyes burning. But I didn't care. Every stitch was for him, for my Arthur. So my son could go to college, so he could have the books I was never able to open, so he could wear clean ironed shirts when all the other kids in our neighborhood barely had enough to eat. I was widowed 15 years ago. My husband, Ernest, died of a heart attack while waiting for the bus to go to work. He collapsed right on Main Street, in front of the old Victory Market. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was already gone. I was left alone. Arthur was already married, already had his own life in Austin, his job at a logistics company, his wife Rebecca, their 2 children. I stayed behind, sewing, surviving, visiting them once a year for Christmas. 3 years ago, when I could no longer afford the rent on my small apartment, Arthur called me. His voice sounded tired, distant, as if he were fulfilling an obligation. "Mom, you can't go on like this. Come stay with us. We have a room in the back of the house. It's not much, but it's yours." He said it as if he were giving me the world, as if I weren't his mother, as if I hadn't sold even my sewing machine to pay for his graduation party. I arrived in Austin on a Tuesday in March. I remember it was raining. The house was large, 2 stories, with a garden out front and a black iron fence. Rebecca greeted me at the door with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was a thin woman with straight black hair, always dressed in designer clothes, always smelling of expensive perfume. She looked me up and down, as if she were evaluating an old piece of furniture that had just been brought into her living room. "Oh, Dottie, so glad you made it. Come on, I'll show you to your room." She led me down a side path. We crossed the backyard where there were pots of geraniums and a grill that looked new. At the very back, almost against the fence, was a small structure, a peeling wooden door, a window with bars. Inside, a twin bed, an old nightstand, a closet without a door, and a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. It smelled of dampness and being closed up. "You'll be comfortable here, Dottie," Rebecca said in that syrupy voice she used when Arthur was around. "And don't worry, we won't charge you rent. We're doing you a favor." A favor. They repeated that word to me so many times that I ended up believing I was a burden, that I should be grateful for every plate of food, every glass of water, every time they allowed me to use the bathroom in the main house because the one in the back room didn't have a shower. The first few months, I tried to be useful. I cooked, I cleaned, I looked after my grandchildren when Rebecca went shopping or to her yoga classes. I ironed everyone's clothes, swept the yard, washed the dishes after every meal. I thought that if I made myself indispensable, if I proved I wasn't a burden, maybe they would see me differently. Maybe they would love me a little. But over time, things changed. Or maybe they were always like that, and I just didn't want to see it. Rebecca stopped smiling. She started speaking to me with impatience, as if every word she directed at me was an effort. If I asked a question, she would sigh before answering. If I cooked, she said the smell made her sick. If I cleaned, she said I did it wrong. My grandchildren, Sam and Valerie, stopped hugging me. When I tried to tell them stories or teach them how to make yarn braids like I did as a child, Rebecca would call them away. "Kids, go play in your room. Don't bother Grandma," as if I were the nuisance, as if my presence contaminated them, and Arthur, my son, became a stranger. He was no longer the boy who hugged me when he came home from school. The one who told me, "Mom, when I grow up, I'm going to buy you a house." Now he was a tired man, always glued to his phone, always on his wife's side. When I tried to talk to him, he would nod without looking at me. When I asked him to help me carry something heavy, he'd say, "I can't right now, Mom. Ask Rebecca." And Rebecca would ignore me. That Tuesday morning, I went out early to the neighborhood market. I didn't have any money, but I had learned to haggle, to wait until the end of the day when the vendors sold off what was left. I bought a sweet roll for my grandchildren, the kind they liked when they still paid attention to me. I put it in my canvas bag and walked the 6 blocks back to the house. The gate was open. That was strange. They always locked it, even when they were inside. I entered slowly, careful not to make a sound. I didn't want to bother them. I never wanted to bother them. I heard laughter. It was coming from the living room. I approached along the side path, pressing myself against the wall as if I were an intruder in the house where I was supposed to live. The voices became clearer. It was Rebecca and my son. I peeked in, just barely, hidden behind the slightly ajar door. They were sitting on the leather sofa they had bought last year, the one I was never allowed to use because Rebecca said I would get it dirty. "Look, Arthur," Rebecca was saying as she flipped through a magazine. "I can't stand your mother anymore. She smells like an old lady, takes up space, and doesn't even pay rent. Every time I see her, I want to scream at her to get out." My heart stopped beating. The words stabbed me like daggers, slow, sharp, straight to the chest. Arthur let out a laugh, a short, complicit laugh. He didn't stop her. He didn't defend me. He just said, "Come on, honey, just hang in there. If she lasts a few more years, we'll put her in a home and keep everything she has. You know the old lady has her stash." I swayed. My legs gave out from under me. I grabbed the doorframe to keep from falling. I felt the air leave my lungs, my chest tighten, the world go dark. Her stash. They were talking about my jewelry. The only thing I had left. My mother's gold earrings she wore on her wedding day. The coral rosary my grandmother gave me before she died. The engagement ring Ernest gave me when we barely had enough to eat, when he worked as a loader and I washed other people's clothes. For 40 years, I saved every penny. I sold some pieces when necessary, but I kept the most valuable ones. I hid them in a tin box under my blankets, wrapped in old cloths. They were worth over $400,000. They were my security, my peace of mind, the proof that I didn't depend on anyone. But now I knew that they knew, and they were planning to take it all from me. I backed away in silence, the sweet roll still in my hand. I walked slowly, as if the ground might break beneath my feet. I reached my room, closed the door without a sound, and sat on the bed. I didn't cry. Not yet. The tears would come later. At that moment, I only felt an immense emptiness, a silence so profound it hurt more than any scream. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the peeling wall in front of me. There was a damp spot that seemed to grow every day, forming shapes I tried to decipher on sleepless nights. That stain had become my companion, my only silent witness. With trembling hands, I reached under the mattress. There it was, my tin box. It was an old Danish cookie tin I'd found in the trash years ago. The paint was worn, but you could still see the faded drawing of blue flowers. I pulled it out slowly, as if it were a treasure that could break with a sudden move. I opened it. The smell of mothballs and old fabric hit my nose. There they were, wrapped in scraps of fabric I had sewn myself. My mother's earrings gleaming faintly in the yellow light of the bulb. The coral rosary, each bead worn from years of prayer. Ernest's ring, with the nearly faded inscription that read, "Forever, my Dottie." A gold brooch that had belonged to my grandmother. 2 thin chains I had bought with my first official paycheck as a seamstress. And a pair of pearl earrings a client had given me when I made her daughter's sweet 16 dress. Every piece had a story. Every piece was a part of my life. They weren't just jewels. They were memories turned into metal and precious stones. They were the only things I had left from the people who had truly loved me. I touched Ernest's ring. I remembered the day he gave it to me. We were in Franklin Park, sitting on a wrought iron bench that's still there. He was trembling so much he could barely get the ring out of the little cardboard box he carried it in. He was a big man, with calloused hands from carrying loads all day. But in that moment, He seemed like a frightened child. "Dottie," he had said, his voice cracking, "I don't have much to offer you, but what I have is yours. My whole life, if you'll have me." I had cried so much he thought I was saying no. I had to hug him to make him understand they were tears of happiness. Now, 50 years later, I held that ring between my wrinkled fingers and felt Ernest speaking to me from wherever he was. "Don't let them take it, Dottie. Don't let them steal what's yours." I closed the box and hid it again. I had to think. I had to do something. But what? Confront them? Scream that I had heard them? And then what? They would throw me out on the street that very night. Or worse, they would take the box by force and say I was crazy, that I was making things up, that I was a senile old woman who didn't know what she was saying. I left the room with the sweet roll still in the bag. I walked toward the main house. I went in through the kitchen door, as always, like the servant I had become. Rebecca was there, making herself one of those expensive green teas she bought at an organic store downtown. She glanced at me when I came in, with that expression of annoyance that had become permanent on her face. "You're back?" she asked, without turning to look at me. "Yes, dear. I brought a roll for the kids." I took the sweet roll out of the bag and placed it on the table. Rebecca looked at it as if it were trash. "Oh, Dottie, this junk again? The kids don't eat that. It's bad for them. They have to watch their diet." She picked up the roll with 2 fingers, as if disgusted to touch it, and threw it directly into the trash can. I watched it fall on top of orange peels and breakfast scraps. "You'd better get to washing the dishes," she ordered. "I left them all dirty this morning." I stood there, staring at the trash can. The roll I had bought with the change I had saved for a week, the roll I had carried for 6 blocks under the sun, was there, despised, thrown away as if it were worthless. Just like me. I went to the sink. The water was cold. They never let me use the water heater. Rebecca said it wasted too much electricity. I plunged my hands into the icy water and started scrubbing the plates with a sponge that had no soap left. My knuckles turned red, then purple, but I kept scrubbing. Rebecca left the kitchen with her tea in hand, talking on the phone with a friend. I heard her laugh, telling her she was going to the spa on the weekend, that she was getting a new facial that cost $300. $300? What I used to earn in a whole month when I worked at the shop. I finished washing. I dried my hands on the old towel hanging from the hook. My fingers burned from the cold. I left the kitchen and ran into Arthur in the hallway. He was coming out of his room, already dressed in his gray suit, his briefcase in hand. "Son?" I tried to speak. "Not now, Mom. I'm late." He cut me off without stopping. He walked past me as if I were a piece of furniture, as if I were part of the wall. I stood there in the middle of the hallway, watching him walk away, watching the boy I had carried in my arms, the one I had rocked to sleep when he cried, the one I had taught to tie his shoes, become a man who didn't see me. I went back to my room. I closed the door. And it was there, finally, that I allowed myself to cry. I cried for everything, for the lost years, for the unappreciated sacrifice, for the love I gave without measure, and that was never returned. I cried for Ernest, who would have died of shame if he saw what our son had become. I cried for myself, for the woman I was, for the one I never got to be. The tears streamed down my face, and I did nothing to stop them. I let them all out, like a river that had been dammed for too long. When I had no tears left, I washed my face in the small basin I kept on the nightstand. The water was lukewarm and cloudy. I looked at myself in the piece of broken mirror I had taped to the wall. I saw an old woman, a tired woman, a woman who had forgotten who she was before becoming a mother, a widow, a burden. But I also saw something else. I saw rage, a rage that was beginning to smolder, like the embers of a fire that seemed to be out, but still have heat inside. 2 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, I was in my room folding the few clothes I had. I had gone to the public laundromat because they wouldn't let me use the washing machine in the house. Rebecca said it wasted too much water and the noise bothered her. I was putting my blouses in the doorless closet when I heard footsteps. Quick, determined footsteps. I turned, and there she was, Rebecca, with my tin box in her hands. My heart stopped. What are you doing with that?" I managed to say, though my voice came out as a whisper. Rebecca looked at me with that smile I had seen her use when she talked to her friends on the phone. That fake smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, Dottie," she said in that syrupy voice I hated so much. "I found this while I was cleaning. Did you know it's dangerous to keep valuables here? There have been a lot of break-ins in the neighborhood." "Give it back," I said, taking a step toward her. "It's mine." "Of course it is, Dottie. That's why I'm going to put it in a safe place. In the safe in our bedroom. That way no one will steal it." "No, those are my things. My memories." "Oh, don't be so dramatic," she interrupted, her tone hardening. "You don't even use them. Besides, you live here for free, don't you? You should be grateful we support you. That we give you a roof and food. Not everyone does that." She turned and started walking toward the door. I moved quickly, faster than I thought I could. I grabbed her arm. "Give me my box!" Rebecca jerked away with a sharp movement. She looked at me with such pure contempt that I felt it burn me. "Don't touch me, old woman. And keep your voice down. The children are home." "Arthur!" I screamed with all my might. "Arthur, come here!" My son appeared at the door seconds later. He took in the scene, his wife with my box in her hands, me with my hands outstretched, trembling with rage and fear. "What's going on in here?" he asked, annoyed. "Your wife is stealing from me," I said, my voice breaking. Arthur sighed, as if I were the one causing trouble. "Mom, Rebecca just wants to look after your things. It's not safe here. There have been robberies in the neighborhood. That jewelry is the only thing I have. It's mine." "And nobody is saying it isn't," Rebecca chimed in. "I'm just going to keep it safe. When you need it, you just have to ask me for it." "I don't believe you," I said, looking her straight in the eye. "I heard what you two said the other day. I know you want to sell it." A heavy silence fell. Rebecca looked at Arthur. Arthur looked at me. And for a second, just a second, I saw guilt in his eyes. But it lasted barely a blink. "Mom, what did you hear?" he asked carefully. "I heard you saying you were going to put me in a nursing home, that you were going to take everything I own." Rebecca let out a dry laugh. "Oh, Dottie, I think you're starting to hear things. That happens with age, doesn't it, Arthur?" My son said nothing. He just looked down. "Give me back my box," I repeated, my voice firmer this time. "No," Rebecca said, and she walked out of the room with my jewelry in her hands. Arthur stood there in the doorway. I looked at him. I looked at him the way you look at a stranger, because that's what he was now, a stranger with my son's face. "Are you just going to let her do this?" I asked. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Mom, it's for your own good," he finally said, and he left. I was left alone in that room that smelled of dampness and disillusionment. I sat on the bed. I looked at the mattress where I had hidden my box for 3 years, and I knew, with a painful clarity, that I could no longer stay silent, that the time had come to fight back, even if it meant I would be left completely alone. I didn't eat dinner that night. No one called me for dinner, and I didn't have the strength to leave my room. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the laughter coming from the main house. I could hear my grandchildren playing, Rebecca scolding them to hurry up and take their baths, Arthur watching TV. A normal life, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just stolen the only thing I had left. I got up when everything was quiet. It must have been 11 at night, maybe later. I walked slowly to the kitchen. The light from the refrigerator was the only thing illuminating the space when I opened it. Inside there was everything: juice, yogurt, chopped fruit in containers, a half-eaten rotisserie chicken, milk, cheese, ham. I took a cold tortilla from a bag and a piece of cheese. That was my dinner. I ate it standing by the sink, in silence, in the dark, like a mouse stealing crumbs when no one is watching. When I finished, I washed my glass so as not to leave any evidence that I had been there. I didn't want Rebecca to get angry in the morning because I used something without permission. I went back to my room. I lay down again, but I couldn't sleep. I thought of my mother, how she had taught me to be strong, not to complain, to be grateful for what life gave me. "The women in this family don't cry," she would tell me while ironing other people's clothes to feed us. "The women in this family endure." And I endured. I endured my whole life. I endured when my husband died and I was left alone. I endured when I had to work twice as hard to pay for Arthur's school. I endured when I lost my home and came to live here, in the back room, like a housekeeper. But for how long? How long did I have to keep enduring? The days that followed were worse. Rebecca stopped hiding her contempt. When I entered the kitchen, she would sigh loudly, as if my presence ruined her day. If I spoke, she would interrupt me or simply walk away without answering. If I tried to sit in the living room, she would tell me she had company and that I should stay in my room. Arthur began to avoid me. He left early for work and came back late. On weekends, he would lock himself in his room or go out with his family without telling me, as if I were a ghost, as if I didn't exist. My grandchildren didn't even greet me anymore. When I tried to talk to them, they would run and hide behind their mother. One afternoon, I tried to give Sam a piece of candy I had saved from my last trip to the market, and Rebecca snatched it from my hands. "Don't give my son junk, lady. Can't you see he's overweight?" Sam wasn't overweight. He was a normal, healthy child, but Rebecca always found reasons to keep them away from me. A week passed. Then 2. I was living in a silence that was eating me alive. The only words I heard were orders. Sweep the patio. Wash the dishes. Clean the guest bathroom. Hang the laundry. Orders. As if I were the maid. As if my only value was the work I could do. One Tuesday afternoon, while I was sweeping the yard, I heard voices in the living room. I recognized Rebecca's voice and that of another woman I didn't know. I approached slowly, hiding behind the window. Rebecca was sitting on the sofa with an elegant woman, about 40, with short hair and a silk blouse. The woman had my tin box open on the coffee table. She was examining my jewelry with a small lens, one piece at a time, as if she were an expert. "These are antique pieces," the woman was saying. "This coral rosary is especially valuable. And the gold earrings are high carat. I could offer you $50,000 for the whole lot." My heart stopped beating. "Is that all?" Rebecca asked, disappointed. "If you sell them separately, you could get more," the woman explained. "But it would take months. I'm giving you cash right now. No questions, no paperwork. It's a good offer." Rebecca picked up Ernest's ring between her fingers. My ring. The ring my husband had bought with an entire month's salary. She looked at it with indifference, as if it were a simple object with no history. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll take it." No. 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 I wanted to scream. I wanted to go in and snatch the box from her hands. I wanted to hit her, push her, make her understand that the jewelry wasn't hers, that she had no right. But my body wouldn't move. My legs felt like stone. I could only watch, paralyzed, as the woman took an envelope from her purse and handed cash to Rebecca, as Rebecca counted it with a smile, as the woman put my jewelry into a black velvet bag and took it away forever. When the woman left, I stood there in the yard, broom in hand, feeling something inside me shatter into a million pieces. Rebecca came out of the house minutes later. She saw me standing there. She smiled. "Oh, Dottie, what are you doing standing there like a statue? Finish sweeping before it gets dark." She walked past me, got into her SUV, and drove away, probably to spend the money she had just stolen from me. I went into the house like a zombie. I went straight to the kitchen. I opened drawer after drawer, looking for something, anything. I found a kitchen knife. I held it in my hand. It was heavy. It was sharp. For a moment, just for a moment, I thought about hurting myself, ending it all, stopping this pain that was consuming me from the inside. But then I looked out the window and saw the evening sky, that orange and pink sky that my mother loved so much. And I remembered something she told me once when I was a child and some neighborhood boys had taken my doll and thrown it into a ditch. "Dottie, when someone takes something from you, you don't destroy yourself. You fight. Even if it's with the little you have left, you fight." I dropped the knife. I left it in the sink. And I went to my room. That night, lying in my bed, I made a decision. I wasn't going to stay silent. I wasn't going to let myself die in that room while they enjoyed my sacrifice, my silence, my pain. I had to do something. But what? I had no money for a lawyer. I had nowhere to go. I had no one. Or so I thought. The next day, Wednesday, I got up early as always. I put on my least old dress, the one that didn't have holes in the seams yet. I combed my hair carefully, washed my face with cold water, and pinched my cheeks to give them some color. I left the house without saying goodbye to anyone. No one asked where I was going. No one noticed I was gone. I walked to the bus stop. I waited 20 minutes in the sun for the route that took me downtown. I paid my fare and sat by the window. The bus was crowded. Women with grocery bags, students with their backpacks, workers in dirty uniforms. Normal people living their normal lives. No one knew I had just been robbed. No one knew my family was slowly destroying me. I got off at the town square. There was the gazebo, the trees, the iron benches where couples sat to take pictures. I sat on one of those benches, away from everyone, and took a crumpled piece of paper from my purse. It was an old card a nurse at the hospital had given me when I fainted 2 years ago. The card said, "The Hope and Haven Women's Shelter, free legal and psychological help." There was a phone number and an address. I had never used it. I had saved it just in case. But just in case had arrived. I walked to the address, 3 blocks north, 2 west. I came to an old 2-story building, painted yellow. The door was open. I went inside. It smelled of coffee and paper. There was a small waiting room with plastic chairs and old magazines on a small table. A young woman, about 30, was sitting behind a desk. She looked up when I came in. "Good morning, ma'am. How can I help you?" I stood there, clutching my purse to my chest, not knowing what to say. How do you begin to tell someone that your own family is destroying you? Where do you start? The woman smiled kindly. "Come in, ma'am. Have a seat. No one is going to judge you here." I sat down, and for the first time in weeks, in months, maybe in years, I opened my mouth and let it all out. I told her about Arthur, about Rebecca, about the back room, about the jewelry they stole from me, about how they treated me like trash, about how I didn't know if it was worth living anymore. The woman listened. She didn't interrupt. She didn't tell me I was exaggerating. She just listened, taking notes in a notebook. When I finished, she closed her notebook and looked me straight in the eye. "Mrs. Miller, what they are doing to you is called domestic violence and financial abuse. It's a crime, and we can help you." Those words were like water in the desert. "Really?" I asked, my voice broken. "Really," she said. "But I need you to tell me everything in detail. I need dates, names, witnesses if there are any. And I need you to be willing to confront them legally. Confront them. Confront my own son. The family I had built with my own blood and sacrifice." "Do I have to?" I asked, feeling scared. "No, ma'am," the woman replied gently. "You don't have to do anything you don't want to. But if you continue like this, if you let them keep abusing you, it will only get worse. And one day, you might not be able to ask for help." I remained silent, thinking about everything I had lost, about everything I was still losing every day. And then I remembered my mother's face, her strength, her dignity, her way of facing life even when everything was against her. "I want to confront them," I said finally. "I don't know how, but I want to do it." The woman smiled. "Then let's get started. My name is Patricia, and I'm going to help you get your life back." For the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. Small, fragile, but it was there. Patricia explained that the process wouldn't be quick or easy. We needed proof, photos of the room where they had me living, witnesses who could confirm the mistreatment, documents that proved the jewelry was mine. "Do you have any papers that show the jewelry belonged to you?" Patricia asked. "Receipts? Certificates? Photographs?" I shook my head, feeling foolish. I just had them. Some were my mother's. Others I bought myself many years ago. But I don't have papers. Who keeps papers for something they bought 50 years ago? Patricia nodded understandingly. "That's okay, Mrs. Miller. We'll work with what we have. Is there anyone who can testify that you owned that jewelry? A friend? A neighbor?" I thought about the few people I knew. I didn't have any friends in Austin. I barely left the house. The only people who saw me were the vendors at the market, and they didn't even know my name. "I have a cousin in my old hometown," I said finally. "Martha. She saw the jewelry after I was widowed. I showed it to her because I didn't know what to do with it. She told me to keep it, that it was worth a lot." "Perfect," Patricia said, writing it down. I need you to give me her phone number. We'll contact her and ask her to give a statement. I also need you to write down everything you remember. When they took the jewelry, who was present, what exactly they said. She gave me a notepad and a pen. My hands trembled as I took the pen. It had been years since I'd written anything more than a grocery list. Take your time, Patricia said gently. You don't have to do it all today, but I need you to be as detailed as possible. Every little thing counts. I stayed there for 2 hours, writing. I wrote about the day Rebecca came into my room and took my box. I wrote about the conversation I overheard where they planned to put me in a home. I wrote about the woman who came to buy my jewelry. I wrote everything I could remember, even though my fingers ached and my vision blurred from crying as I wrote. When I was done, Patricia read it all carefully. Then she looked up and said something I'll never forget. Mrs. Miller, you are not crazy. You are not exaggerating. What they are doing to you is real. It's serious, and you do not have to put up with it. Those words broke me. I cried right there, in that office, in front of a woman I barely knew. I cried because someone finally believed me. Because someone told me it wasn't my fault. That it wasn't my imagination. Patricia handed me a tissue and waited for me to calm down. Now, she said once I could breathe again, I need you to make an important decision. We can start legal proceedings against your daughter-in-law for theft and conversion, but that means your son will also be involved, because she's his wife. Are you prepared for that? The question hit me in the chest. Suing Rebecca meant suing Arthur too. It meant breaking definitively with my son, my grandchildren, the only family I had left. I don't know, I whispered. He's my son. He's all I have. Patricia leaned forward, looking me straight in the eyes. Mrs. Miller, with all due respect, your son stopped acting like a son the day he allowed his wife to mistreat you, the day he let you live in that room, without heating, without dignity, the day they stole your jewelry and he did nothing. You don't have him. You haven't had him for a long time. Her words hurt because they were true, a truth I had been avoiding for years. What if I do it and lose everything? I asked. What if I end up truly alone? Ma'am, Patricia said firmly, you are already alone. The difference is that now you can choose to be alone with dignity or continue to be alone while they keep using you. I was quiet, processing her words. I thought of my mother. I thought of my husband. I thought of the woman I had been before I became a shadow. I want to do it, I said finally, my voice stronger than I expected. I want to get back what's mine. Patricia smiled. Then we're going to fight. But I need you to understand something. This is going to get ugly. They are going to try to make you feel guilty. They'll say you're a bad mother, that you're ungrateful. They will try to manipulate you. Can you stand firm? I don't know, I answered honestly, but I'm going to try. That's all I need to hear, Patricia said. I returned to the house as it was getting dark. No one asked where I'd been. Rebecca was in the kitchen making dinner. Arthur was in the living room watching the news. The kids were playing in their rooms. Normal life, as if I didn't exist. I went straight to my room and closed the door. I sat on the bed and took a piece of paper from my purse that Patricia had given me. It was a phone number and an emergency address in case things got dangerous. If at any point you feel you're in danger, she had told me, call this number. There's a shelter for elderly women facing violence. They can take you in 24 hours a day. I tucked the paper deep into my purse, where no one could find it. That night, for the first time in weeks, I slept a little better. Not because things had improved, but because someone was finally on my side. The next few days were strange. I kept doing the same things. Cleaning, washing, sweeping, but something inside me had changed. I didn't hang my head so low anymore. I didn't apologize for existing, Rebecca noticed. What's with you lately, Dottie? She asked one day while I was washing dishes. You're acting weird. Nothing's wrong with me, I replied without looking at her. She murmured suspiciously. Well, you'd better not be planning anything. Remember, you live here out of charity. Charity. That word they love to use. As if giving me a room in the back of the house was an act of divine generosity and not the minimum obligation of a son to his mother. I didn't say anything. I just kept washing the dishes. A week after my visit to the center, Patricia called the cheap cell phone I had bought at the market. It was the first time the phone had ever rung, and it startled me so much I almost dropped it. "Mrs. Miller?" I heard her voice on the other end. "I have good news. Your cousin Martha has given her statement. She confirms that you showed her the jewelry several years ago and told her you were saving it as an inheritance for your son." I felt a huge sense of relief. "Is that good?" "It's very good," Patricia replied. "Now I need you to come to the office to sign the official complaint. And I need you to be prepared. Once we file, things are going to move fast." "How fast?" "They will likely summon your daughter-in-law to give a statement in less than a week, and your son too." A knot formed in my stomach. What if they get angry? What if they kick me out? "That's why I've also arranged something else," Patricia said. "There's a space available at the shelter I mentioned. It's not luxurious, but it's safe, clean, and free. You can stay there while we sort everything out." "When would I have to go?" "Whenever you're ready. But I recommend you pack a bag with your essentials just in case. And most importantly, Mrs. Miller, don't tell them anything yet. Nothing about the complaint, nothing about the shelter. It's important that this comes as a surprise, so they can't prepare a defense or intimidate you." We hung up. I sat on my bed, staring at the phone in my hand. Everything was happening so fast. 2 weeks ago, I was resigned to dying in that room, and now I was about to sue my own family. Was I doing the right thing? That night, while everyone was asleep, I pulled my only suitcase out from under the bed. It was an old fabric suitcase with a broken zipper and frayed corners. I started packing my clothes. 3 blouses, 2 skirts, a sweater, underwear, socks. Everything I owned fit in that small suitcase. I also packed the few photographs I still had. One from my wedding, where Ernest and I looked so young and full of hope. One of Arthur as a baby, smiling without any teeth. One of my mother on her last birthday, surrounded by flowers. I closed the suitcase and hid it under the bed again. I was ready. I just had to wait for the right moment. That moment came 3 days later, on a Monday morning. Arthur had already left for work. The kids were at school. Rebecca had gone out to the supermarket. I took out the suitcase, grabbed my purse, and left the room. I walked through the yard, went out the gate, and closed it behind me. I didn't look back. I couldn't. Because if I did, I might not have the courage to keep walking. I took the bus downtown. I arrived at Patricia's office. She was waiting for me with a smile. "Ready?" she asked. "Ready," I replied, though my voice trembled. I signed the papers, one after another. A complaint for theft, a complaint for financial abuse, a request for a restraining order. Each signature was another step away from the life I knew, but also a step closer to getting my dignity back. When I finished, Patricia put all the documents in a folder. "It's done," she said. "There's no turning back now." "I know," I said, feeling my hands shake. "Now, let's go to the shelter. You'll be safe there while we process all of this." She drove me in her car. We drove through streets I didn't know, until we reached a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. From the outside, it looked like a normal house. Nothing to indicate it was a shelter. She rang the bell. A woman in her 50s opened the door. She had graying hair tied in a bun and a kind smile. "You must be Dorothy," she said. "Come in, welcome. My name is Rose. You'll be fine here." I stepped inside. The house smelled of lavender and home-cooked food. There was a living room with comfortable sofas, a large kitchen where 2 women were cooking something on the stove, a dining room with a big table. "Come," said Rose. "I'll show you your room." We went up the stairs. She opened a door at the end of the hall. Inside was a single bed, a nightstand, a closet, and a window with white curtains. It was small, but clean and bright. "It's yours," Rose said, "for as long as you need it." I sat on the bed. It was soft. The sheets smelled like fabric softener. The window looked out onto a garden with trees. And for the first time in 3 years, I felt like I was home. The first few days at the shelter were strange. I wasn't used to being treated with kindness. Every time Rose or one of the other women asked me how I was or if I needed anything, I would freeze, not knowing how to respond. "Dorothy, would you like more coffee?" Rose asked me one morning at breakfast. "No, don't trouble yourself," I said automatically. "I've had enough. It's no trouble, dear." she replied with a smile. That's what the coffee is for, to be served. She poured me another cup without waiting for my answer. I stared at the hot coffee, feeling my eyes well up with tears. It was just coffee. But to me, it was so much more. It was someone asking me what I needed. It was someone taking care of me. 5 other women lived at the shelter, all of them older, all with stories similar to mine. There was Constance, 68, whose son and daughter-in-law had taken her house after she signed some papers she didn't understand. There was Beatrice, 74, who had lived locked in a room for 10 years while her family rented out the rest of her own house. There was Amanda, 65, whose addict son had stolen all her belongings to sell for drugs. Every evening after dinner, we would sit in the living room and talk. At first, I just listened, not daring to speak. But slowly, I started to tell my story, too. And every time I did, the other women would nod, understanding perfectly what I had been through. You just never think it will happen to you, Constance would say. You raise your children with so much love, so much sacrifice, and then it turns out you're just a burden to them. Or worse, Beatrice would add, an object they can use until it's no longer useful. One afternoon, 4 days after I arrived, Patricia came to visit. She had a folder under her arm and a serious expression on her face. Dorothy, I need to talk to you, she said as we sat in the shelter's small garden. Your daughter-in-law and your son have been summoned to give their statements. The hearing is the day after tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 in the morning. I need you to come with me. My stomach churned. Do I have to see them? Yes, Patricia answered. It's part of the process. But you'll be with me the whole time, and the judge will be present. No one will be able to do anything to you. What will they say when they see me? I asked, my voice trembling. What will my son say? Patricia sighed. They will probably be angry. They will try to make you feel guilty. They will say you betrayed them, that you're ungrateful. But Dorothy, I need you to remember something very important. You did nothing wrong. You are just defending what is yours. I spent the next 2 nights barely sleeping. I kept replaying what might happen in my head. What if Arthur asked for my forgiveness? What if he told me it was all a mistake? That he missed me? That he wanted me back? Would I have the strength to stand firm? On Wednesday morning, Rose helped me get dressed. She lent me a newer blouse than mine, helped me comb my hair, and gave me encouragement. You're going to be fine, she said, taking my hands. You're stronger than you think. Patricia picked me up at 9. We drove in silence to the courthouse. It was a large concrete building with high stairs and long hallways that smelled of old paper and disinfectant. We entered a waiting room, and there they were. Rebecca was sitting in a plastic chair, dressed in an elegant suit, perfectly made up as always. Arthur was next to her in his gray work suit, staring at his phone. When they saw me walk in, their expressions changed. Rebecca's mouth fell open in surprise. Arthur turned pale. Mom? My son said, standing up. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. Patricia led me to some chairs on the other side of the room. We sat down. I kept my gaze lowered, feeling my heart beat so fast I thought everyone could hear it. This is a joke, right? I heard Rebecca's voice, sharp and annoyed. They summoned us because of her? Rebecca, calm down, Arthur said in a low voice. Calm down. My daughter-in-law's voice rose. Your mother is suing us. She's going to ruin our lives over some crazy old lady's whim. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to lower your voice, Patricia intervened firmly. We are in a courthouse. Rebecca looked at me with a hatred so intense I felt it burn. Arthur approached where I was sitting. Mom, he said in a pleading voice. What are you doing? Why are you doing this? We're your family. I looked up and met his eyes. I saw my son, but I also saw the man who had allowed me to be treated like trash. The man who had planned to put me in a home to take my things. The man who had laughed when his wife said I smelled. You stopped being my family the day you stole from me, I said, my voice broken but firm. Arthur stepped back as if I had slapped him. Steal from you? Nobody stole anything. Rebecca was just looking after your things. She sold them, I said. I saw the woman who came. I saw her give Rebecca the money. My jewelry was worth over $400,000, and she sold it for $50,000. And you did nothing. Mom, That jewelry was old. It wasn't worth that much. It was mine, I yelled, surprising myself. It was the only thing I had left of my mother, of my husband, of my life, and you took it as if it was worth nothing. The silence that followed was heavy, thick. Arthur stared at me, his mouth open. He had never heard me yell. In my entire life, I had never raised my voice to him. "Morrison family and Mrs. Miller," a clerk called from a doorway. "The judge will see you now." We entered the courtroom. It was a small space with white walls and a large desk where the judge sat, a man in his 60s with glasses and a serious expression. We were told to sit. Patricia sat beside me. Arthur and Rebecca sat with their lawyer on the other side. The judge reviewed the documents and then looked at all of us. "We are here regarding a complaint filed by Mrs. Dorothy Miller against Mrs. Rebecca Morrison for the crimes of theft and conversion, and against Mr. Arthur Morrison for complicity and domestic abuse. Is that correct?" Patricia nodded. "That is correct, Your Honor." The judge looked at Rebecca. "Mrs. Morrison, did you take possession of the jewelry belonging to Mrs. Miller?" Rebecca shifted uncomfortably in her seat. I was just keeping it safe. My mother-in-law is elderly. I was worried it would be stolen from that room where she lives." "Where you had her living?" the judge interrupted. Rebecca fell silent. "And is it true that you sold said jewelry?" We needed the money," Rebecca stammered. "We had debts. Debts that Mrs. Miller was obligated to pay?" the judge asked in a severe tone. "Or were they your debts?" Rebecca looked down. "They were ours." The judge turned to Arthur. "Mr. Morrison, were you aware that your wife sold your mother's belongings?" Arthur swallowed hard. Yes, but, and did you authorize that sale?" "It wasn't like that," Arthur said nervously. "My wife needed money and Did you know or not?" "I knew," Arthur finally admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The judge wrote something on his papers. Then he looked at me. "Mrs. Miller, is it true that you lived in precarious conditions in your son's home?" "Yes, sir," I answered. "They had me in a room in the back without heating, without hot water. Sometimes they wouldn't give me food. They treated me like a servant." "And do you have witnesses to this?" Patricia opened her folder. "We have the statement from Mrs. Miller's cousin, photographs of the room where she was living, and testimony from neighbors who confirmed seeing the mistreatment." The judge reviewed everything carefully. The silence in the room was absolute. I could hear my own breathing. Finally, the judge looked up. "I have heard enough. Mrs. Morrison, you are hereby charged with the crimes of theft and conversion. You have 30 days to return the full value of the sold jewelry, which, according to the independent appraisal ordered by this court, amounts to $420,000. Rebecca shot to her feet. "That's impossible. We don't have that kind of money." "You should have thought of that before you sold what wasn't yours," the judge replied coldly. "Furthermore, I am issuing a restraining order. You may not approach or contact Mrs. Miller in any way." Then he looked at Arthur. "Mr. Morrison, as an accomplice and as the person directly responsible for your mother's well-being, you are hereby ordered to pay monthly support of $1,000 until Mrs. Miller has secured dignified housing and financial stability. Furthermore, you and any member of your family are prohibited from approaching her without her consent." Arthur turned white. "But how am I going to pay for all that?" "You should have thought of that before," the judge repeated. "This hearing is adjourned." He banged his gavel on the desk. It was all over. We left the courtroom. Patricia hugged me. "You did it," she said. "You did it, Dorothy." But I couldn't feel any joy. I just felt an enormous emptiness. I looked back and saw Arthur. He was standing in the hallway, looking at me. There were tears in his eyes. "Mom," he whispered. But I didn't say anything. I turned my back on him and walked toward the exit. I had won, but I didn't feel victorious. I just felt free. The days after the hearing were confusing. Patricia explained that the process would take time. Rebecca and Arthur had to pay, but they were appealing, claiming they didn't have the funds. In the meantime, I remained at the shelter, waiting. But something in me had changed. I was no longer the same woman who had arrived 2 weeks ago, scared and broken. Now, when I looked in the mirror, I saw someone different. Someone who had fought and won. Rose noticed it one morning at breakfast. "You look different, Dorothy," she said while spreading jam on her toast. "More awake." "I feel different," I admitted. "I don't feel that weight on my chest that I carried every day." "It's because you got rid of the people who were suffocating you," said Constance from across the table. "I felt the same way when I finally sued my son, like I could breathe for the first time in years." That afternoon, Rose called me into her office. It was a small room next to the kitchen, full of filing cabinets and potted plants. "Sit down, Dorothy," she said, pointing to a chair. "I want to propose something to you." I sat down, curious and a little nervous. "Here at the shelter, we need help with several things," she explained. "Cooking for everyone, keeping the house clean, organizing activities. I can't pay you much, but I can offer you $500 a month, plus your room and board. Would you be interested?" I was silent, processing what she had just said. Was she offering me a job? A place to stay? A purpose? I don't know if I'm up for it," I said, feeling the old insecurity creep back in. "I'm old now. I can't do heavy lifting." "Dorothy," Rose interrupted gently, "I don't need you to move furniture or carry heavy things. I need someone who knows how to cook, who knows how to listen, who understands what these women are going through because she lived it herself. And that person is you." I felt my eyes fill with tears. "Do you really think I can do it?" "I don't think so," Rose said with a smile. "I know so." I accepted. And so, at 72 years old, I started my first paying job in 3 years. At first it was strange. I was used to serving others, but always from a place of obligation and submission. Now it was different. Here I cooked because I was paid to do it. I cleaned because it was my job, not because someone ordered me to. And most importantly, here I was appreciated. "Dorothy, that soup was delicious," Beatrice would tell me after every meal. "Dorothy, the bathroom is sparkling clean, thank you," Amanda would say. Every thank you was like a balm on wounds I didn't even know I had. Each acknowledgement gave me back pieces of the dignity I had lost. A month after the hearing, Patricia came to the shelter with news. "Dorothy, I have good news and bad news," she said as we sat in the living room. "Which do you want first?" "The bad," I replied, bracing myself. "The bad news is that Rebecca and Arthur don't have all the money. They sold the SUV and scraped together about $70,000, but they're still short more than $300,000. My heart sank. "So, I'm not going to get anything back?" "That's where the good news comes in," Patricia said with a small smile. "The judge has ordered a foreclosure on the house. It's valued at about $470,000. Once it's sold, you'll be given the money you're owed, plus interest and legal fees. Arthur gets to keep the rest." "They're going to lose their house?" I asked, feeling a pang in my chest. "Dorothy," Patricia said, looking at me seriously, "they left you with nothing. They took your jewelry, your dignity, your peace of mind. You can't feel sorry for them now." She was right. But it still hurt. Because that house had been my grandchildren's home, the place where Arthur had built his family. But it was also the house where they had humiliated me every day, where they had made me feel invisible, where I had cried so many nights alone. "When will it be sold?" I asked. "The process takes about 3 months. But Dorothy, with that money, you'll be able to buy your own place. Small, but yours. Where no one can kick you out or mistreat you." The idea seemed unreal. Me? With my own home? At 72, when I had already lost all hope of ever having something that was mine. The weeks passed. I kept working at the shelter, cooking, cleaning, talking with the other women. Little by little, that place became my real home. One afternoon, 2 months after the hearing, I was in the kitchen making chicken soup when someone knocked on the door. Rose went to open it. I heard voices. A boy's voice that sounded familiar. "Is my grandma here? Please, I need to see her." My heart leaped. It was Sam, my grandson. I came out of the kitchen, wiping my hands on my apron. There he was, standing in the doorway, taller than the last time I had seen him. His eyes were red, as if he had been crying. "Grandma," he said when he saw me. "Sam," I whispered. "What are you doing here? How did you find me?" "I asked my teacher," he explained. "She knows someone who works at the courthouse, and they told her. Grandma, I need to talk to you." Rose left us alone in the living room. Sam sat on the sofa, nervously fidgeting with his hands. "My mom doesn't know I came," he said. "If she finds out, she'll ground me. But I had to come." "Why, sweetheart?" Because I want to apologize," he said, his voice breaking. "For everything we did to you, for how we treated you. I knew it was wrong, but I was afraid to say anything. My mom always said you were a burden, that we had to put up with you. And I believed her. But it was wrong, Grandma. It was so wrong." Tears rolled down his cheeks. And down mine, too. "Everything is awful at home now," he continued. "My parents fight every day. My dad says it's your fault, that you ruined him. But I know that's not true. I heard things, Grandma. I heard when my mom said she was going to take your jewelry. I heard when my dad said they were going to put you in a home. And I didn't do anything. I didn't say anything. I went to him and hugged him. I felt his body tremble with sobs. You were a child," I said softly. "It wasn't your responsibility to protect me. It was your father's. But now we're going to lose the house," he said through his tears. "And my mom says it's all your fault, that you're a selfish old woman who's destroying us." I felt a surge of anger because even now, Rebecca was still poisoning my grandchildren against me. "Sam, look at me," I said, taking him by the shoulders. "What's happening is not my fault. I only wanted to get back what was stolen from me, what was mine. If your parents are going to lose the house, it's because they made bad decisions, because they treated me badly, because they sold something that didn't belong to them." "Do you hate us?" he asked in a small voice. "No, my love," I answered. "I don't hate you, but I'm not going to let them keep hurting me either. Not anymore." Sam hugged me tightly, like he used to when he was little and had nightmares. "I miss you, Grandma," he whispered. "The house isn't the same without you. Nobody cooks like you. Nobody tells me stories like you do. I miss you too," I admitted. "But now I'm in a place where they treat me well, where they value me, and that's what I deserve." He stayed with me for another hour. I gave him some of the soup I had made. I showed him my room. I told him about the other women at the shelter. When it was time for him to go, he gave me another long hug. "Can I come visit you again?" he asked. "Whenever you want," I told him. "But only if it's your decision, not because your parents sent you to convince me of anything. No, Grandma. It's because I want to see you, because I love you." Watching him walk away was difficult, but I also felt something like peace. Because my grandson had sought me out, because he had apologized, because despite all the poison they had put in his head, he still loved me. 3 weeks later, Patricia called. "Dorothy, they sold the house. The money is available. I need you to come to the bank to handle the paperwork." I couldn't believe it. I went to the bank with Patricia. The manager received us in his office and explained everything. After paying what I was owed, plus interest and legal fees, the total came to $430,000. $430,000. More than my jewelry had originally been worth. "What would you like to do with this money, Mrs. Miller?" the manager asked. I looked at Patricia. She smiled at me. "I want to buy a house," I said. "A small house, but mine." "Excellent decision," the manager said. "I would also recommend investing a portion so you have a monthly income." Patricia helped me with everything. We looked at houses online. We visited several. Finally, we found the perfect one, a small 2-bedroom house in a quiet Austin neighborhood, with a garden in the front and a spacious kitchen. It cost $250,000. "Is this the one?" Patricia asked. I looked at the house. It had pale yellow walls, large windows, and a solid wood door. It was simple, but beautiful. "This is the one," I said with a smile. A month later, I moved in. Rose and the women from the shelter helped me. They brought me gifts, towels, plates, pots, sheets. We all decorated the house together. We hung curtains, placed potted plants, and organized the kitchen. When everyone had left and I was alone in my new house, I sat on the sofa I had bought at a second-hand furniture store. I looked around. Everything was mine. The house was mine. The furniture was mine. My life was mine. For the first time in 72 years, I didn't owe anyone anything, and no one could take this from me. I got up and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting. painting the sky orange and pink. I remembered my mother. I remembered my husband. I remembered the woman I had been before I lost myself in sacrifice. And I smiled, because finally, after so much pain, so much struggle, so much darkness, I had found something I never thought I would have again. I had found my home. I had found my peace. I had found myself. The first few months in my new house were like learning to live all over again. I had to get used to making my own decisions without asking anyone's permission, to eating when I was hungry, not when I was allowed, to sitting in my own living room without fear of someone telling me I was getting the furniture dirty. One morning, I woke up and didn't know what to do. I didn't have to clean anyone's room. I didn't have to make breakfast for a family that despised me. I didn't have to sweep a yard that wasn't mine. For the first time in years, the day was completely my own. I made myself a coffee, slowly, without rushing. I sat in my kitchen, watching through the window as birds flew between the trees, and I cried. But this time, they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of liberation. Patricia continued to visit me every week. One afternoon, she arrived with a proposal. "Dorothy, have you thought about what you're going to do with your time?" she asked as we drank tea in my living room. "I don't know," I admitted. "I'm still getting used to all of this. Sometimes I feel guilty for not doing anything." "Guilty for resting?" Patricia asked with a sad smile. "Dorothy, you worked your entire life. You've earned this rest." "Yes, but I feel empty," I confessed. "Like I'm missing a purpose." Patricia leaned forward. "Would you like to help other women who are going through what you went through?" The question took me by surprise. "How?" "Rose mentioned you were a great help at the shelter, that the women opened up to you, confided things in you they didn't tell anyone else. We're thinking of creating a peer support program. Women who have already been through it and can guide others who are just starting. Would you be interested in being a part of it?" I was quiet, thinking. Me? Helping other people? Being useful not out of obligation, but because I could make a difference? "Yes," I said finally. "I would like that very much." And so a new chapter of my life began. Twice a week I would go to the shelter. I sat with the women who had just arrived, scared, broken, not knowing how to move forward. I told them my story. I told them that it was possible to get out, that there was life after abuse, that they were worth it. One afternoon, I met a woman named Eleanor. She was 67 and had come to the shelter after her daughter and son-in-law left her on the street. She was so lost, so desperate, she could barely speak without crying. I sat with her in the shelter's garden, under the shade of a tree. "I don't understand how I could have been so stupid," Eleanor said through her sobs. "I gave them everything. I watched their kids while they worked. I made the down payment on their car. And now they treat me like garbage." "You weren't stupid," I said, taking her hand. "You were a mother. And mothers give everything because we love, but that doesn't give them the right to abuse us." "But she's my daughter," Eleanor said. "How can I sue her? How can I do that?" "Because you love yourself," I answered. "Because you deserve respect. Because love that isn't returned becomes a chain, and you have to set yourself free." Eleanor looked at me, her eyes full of tears. "Does it hurt? Does it hurt to let go?" "Yes," I admitted. "It hurts a lot, but it hurts less than being trapped forever." 6 months after I moved into my house, Sam started visiting me regularly. He came every Saturday afternoon. At first, he was nervous, as if he were afraid I would reject him, but slowly, he began to relax. I taught him how to cook my mother's recipes. We baked a pumpkin pie for Thanksgiving. We made Christmas cookies. And while we cooked, we talked. He told me about school, his friends, his dreams, and I just listened, happy to have him close. "Grandma," he said one day as we rolled out cookie dough, "my dad asks about you." A lump formed in my throat. "Oh, really?" "Yeah. He says he was wrong, that he's really sorry, that he'd like to talk to you." I stayed quiet, thinking about Arthur, about my son, about the man he had become, and the boy he used to be. "Do you think I should talk to him?" I asked Sam. My grandson shrugged. "I don't know, Grandma. That's your decision. But I think he's really sorry. Now that they've lost the house and everything's changed, I think he finally understands what he did to you." "And your mother?" Sam grimaced. "My mom left. She left my dad when we lost the house. Said she wasn't going to stick with a loser. She left with some guy who has money and left me and Valerie with Dad. I felt a pang in my chest. Not for Rebecca, but for my grandchildren, for what they had to live through. How are you doing? You and your sister? We're okay, Sam said, but his voice didn't sound convinced. We live in a small apartment now. My dad works a lot. He's not the same as before. He doesn't yell or brag anymore. I think all of this changed him. 2 weeks later, as I was watering the plants in my garden, I saw a car pull up in front of my house. I recognized Arthur immediately. He got out of the car slowly, as if he were afraid to approach. He stood on the sidewalk, looking at me. I stood there with the hose in my hand, feeling my heart pound. "Hi, Mom," he finally said, his voice trembling. "Arthur," I replied. Can I come in?" Part of me wanted to say no. I wanted to remind him of all the pain he caused me, all the times he made me feel invisible, all the nights I cried because of him. But another part, the part that was still his mother, just saw my son, my little boy, the one I had held in my arms when he had a fever, the one I had rocked to sleep when he had nightmares. "Come in," I said finally. We went inside. Arthur looked around, taking in every detail, the simple but clean furniture, the plants in the windows, the photographs on the walls. "You look good," he said. "The house is nice." "Thank you." We sat in the living room. The silence between us was heavy, full of unspoken words and unhealed wounds. "Mom, Arthur began, but his voice broke. "I came to apologize for everything, for how I treated you, for what Rebecca and I did, for not defending you, for stealing from you, for—" He covered his face with his hands and began to cry. My son, who never cried, who always acted so tough, was crying in front of me like a child. "I was a bad son," he said through his sobs. "The worst son in the world. I let my wife treat you like trash. I stole from you. I planned to abandon you. And the worst part is, at the time I didn't even feel bad. I thought I was entitled to it, that you owed me everything because I was your son." "Arthur." "No, Mom, let me finish," he interrupted. "I need to say this. I lost everything. The house, my wife, my pride, my dignity. But the worst thing I lost was you. And I lost you because of my own fault. Because I was greedy. Because I was selfish. For forgetting where I came from and who gave me everything." He wiped his tears with the back of his hand. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he continued. "I don't deserve your forgiveness. I just needed you to know that I'm sorry. That I regret it every single day. That when I look at my kids and think about everything you did for me, I'm ashamed I wasn't even half the parent you were as a mother." I was quiet, feeling the tears roll down my own cheeks. "For months, I hated you," I said finally. "I hated you for abandoning me, for stealing from me, for making me feel like I was worthless. But then I understood something. The hatred was only hurting me. You had already taken enough from me. I wasn't going to let you take my peace too." Arthur looked up, his eyes red. "So, you don't hate me?" "I don't hate you," I said. "But I'm not going to forget what happened either. I'm not going back to being the mother who forgives everything and forgets about herself. That woman died the day you stole from me. The woman I am now respects herself. She values herself, and she doesn't accept scraps of love." "I understand," Arthur said, "and I accept that. Is there any way we can start over? Not like before, like something new. Like, I don't know, like two people who are learning to get to know each other again." I thought of my mother, of everything she taught me about family, about forgiveness, about love. But I also thought of everything I had learned on my own. That love without respect isn't love. That forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. That you can love someone and still set boundaries. "We can try," I said finally, "but on my terms. You will respect my boundaries. You will respect my space. And if you ever disrespect me again, this door closes for good. Understood?" Arthur nodded vigorously. "Understood. I promise you, Mom. This time will be different. I don't know if it will be different. I don't know if Arthur has really changed or if he's just sorry because he lost everything. But I decided to give him a chance. Not for him, For me, because I deserve the peace of trying. That night, after Arthur left, I sat in my garden under the stars. I thought about the entire journey, about the broken woman I had been, about the strong woman I had become, and I understood something important. Forgiveness isn't for the person who hurt you. Forgiveness is for yourself, so you can let go of the weight and keep walking lighter. I forgave Arthur, but I will never forget, because the scars remind me where I came from, and they remind me that I will never, ever again, let anyone take my dignity away from me. 2 years have passed since that day I arrived early at my son's house and discovered the worst betrayal of my life. 2 years since I heard those words that shattered my world, but also, without my knowing it, saved me. Today, I am 74 years old. My back is still stooped from decades of sewing. My hands still bear the marks of needles. But my spirit is stronger than ever. I still live in my little yellow house. I've filled it with plants that I care for every morning while I drink my coffee slowly, without rush, without fear. I've painted the walls in cheerful colors. I've hung photographs of my mother, my husband, of happy moments that did exist before everything fell apart. 3 times a week, I go to the Hope and Haven Women's Shelter. There, I sit with women who arrive broken, just as I did. I tell them my story. I show them that it's possible, that life doesn't end when your family betrays you, that you can start over, even in your 70s. Last week, a woman named Josephine arrived. She was 78, and her children had left her on the street after selling her house from under her, forging her signature. She was so lost she could barely form complete sentences. I sat with her, gave her a chamomile tea, and said, "I also thought my life was over, but it turned out that only the part where I let others decide my worth was over." Josephine looked at me with those tired, pain-filled eyes. How? How do you start over when you have no strength left? You don't start with a big step, I answered. You start with a small one. By getting up every morning. By deciding that today you will respect yourself even if no one else does. By learning to love yourself again. I saw something ignite in her eyes. A small spark, almost invisible, but it was there. The same spark that ignited in me when Patricia told me I wasn't crazy, that what they did to me was real and serious. Sam still visits me every Saturday. He's 14 now and taller than me. A month ago, he told me he wants to study law to defend people who, like me, are abused by their own families. "I want to be like Patricia the lawyer," he said as we ate the lasagna we had made together. "I want to help those who don't have a voice." My chest swelled with pride. From my pain, from my struggle, something good was being born. My grandson had learned the lesson his father failed to learn in time. Valerie, my granddaughter, also started visiting 6 months ago. At first, she was quiet, resentful, still poisoned by her mother's words. But slowly, she began to open up. Now she comes and helps me in the garden. We plant tomatoes, peppers, and mint. And as we work the soil, we talk. "Grandma," she asked me one day, "did you forgive my dad?" "Yes and no," I answered honestly. I forgave so I could be at peace with myself, but I didn't forget. And I set boundaries that I didn't have before. And is that okay? To forgive, but not forget? It's okay, sweetheart. Forgiveness doesn't mean you let them hurt you again. It means you let go of the poison so it doesn't keep hurting you. Arthur and I see each other once a month. We have coffee at a downtown cafe, neutral ground. We talk about his kids, his job, superficial things. The relationship isn't like it was before, and it never will be. But there is respect. There is consideration. And above all, there are clear boundaries. Last month, he brought me flowers for my birthday. Daisies, my favorite. The kind my husband used to bring me when we were newlyweds. "Thank you, son," I said as I took them. "Mom," he said in a serious voice, "I know I can never repair what I did to you. I know I broke something that can't be glued back together. But I want you to know that every day I try to be a better person, for my children, and in your memory, for what you taught me. And I forgot. I didn't cry. I don't cry as much as I used to, but I felt something warm in my chest. It wasn't the unconditional, blind love of before. It was something different, more mature, more real. The house they lost was bought by a young family with 3 children. Sometimes I pass by it on my way to the market. I see the children playing in the yard where I used to sweep. I see the mother hanging laundry where I used to hang theirs. And I no longer feel pain. I only feel relief that that chapter is over. With the money I invested, I now receive a monthly payment of $2,000. It's more than I ever earned in my entire working life. It's enough to live with dignity, to buy quality food, to treat myself to little things that were once impossible. Last month, I bought a new dress, sky blue with embroidered flowers. I put it on and looked in the mirror. I saw an old woman, yes, with wrinkles and gray hair and crooked hands, but I also saw a woman who survived, who fought, who won. "You look beautiful, Dorothy," I said to myself, and I believed it. 3 months ago, Rose invited me to give a talk at a community center about elder abuse. Me, who had never spoken in public, who had barely finished elementary school, was going to give a talk. I was terrified. But Patricia helped me prepare what I was going to say. And when the day came, I took a deep breath and told my story in front of 50 people. I told them about the back room, about the roll thrown in the trash, about the stolen jewelry, about the day I decided I was worth more than all of that. And when I finished, everyone in that room stood up and applauded. After the talk, 7 women approached me, 7 older women who were living in similar situations. I gave them the shelter's phone number. I told them they weren't alone, that there was a way out. One of them hugged me and said, "Thank you for giving me hope. I thought it was too late for me." "It's never too late," I replied. "As long as you're alive, you have a chance to change your story." A month ago, I went to visit my husband's grave. It had been years since I'd gone. I brought him flowers and sat on the grass by his headstone. "Ernest," I said quietly, "forgive me for not visiting sooner. Forgive me for being so lost that I forgot who I was. But I want you to know something. I did it. I stood up for myself. I got my dignity back. And I know you would be proud of me." The wind blew gently, rustling the leaves on the trees, and I felt somehow that he heard me, that he was with me, that he always had been. This morning I woke up early, as always. I watered my plants. I made my coffee. I sat on my front porch to watch the sunrise. The sky was painted orange and pink, the same colors my mother loved, and I thought about everything, about where I was 2 years ago, about where I am now, about the journey, the battles fought, the victories won. I don't have a perfect life. There are still difficult days. There are still moments when what I lived through hurts, but it no longer defines me. I am no longer the woman who accepted scraps of love. I am no longer the shadow who walked through life without making a sound. Now, I am Dorothy Miller, 74 years old, survivor, fighter, a free woman. And if my story is good for anything, let it be for this, so that other women, other grandmothers, other mothers who are going through what I went through, know that they are not crazy, that they are not alone, that they deserve respect, true love, and dignity, that it is never, ever too late to stand up for yourself, that love that doesn't value you isn't love, it's a chain, and that sometimes losing your family is the only way to find yourself. Now I want to ask you something. Have you or someone you know experienced something similar? Have you ever felt that you give everything and receive nothing? That your family treats you as if you're invisible? If so, tell me in the comments. Your story matters. Your pain is valid. And you are not alone. And if this story touched your heart, if you felt even a little of what I felt, I ask you to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this need to be heard. They need to reach those who need them most. That grandmother who is crying in silence, that mother who believes there is no way out, that elderly woman who thinks it's too late. It is not too late. It is never too late. As long as you are alive, you have the right to dignity, and that no one, absolutely no one, can take from you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here until the end. And remember, you are worthy. You have always been worthy, and you always will be, until the next story.